all right, we're starting. I'm running, I'm gassing. I was like, okay, hold on. I'm ready for this.
Right.
You know, it was an amazing experience. The community, just everyone support one another. That was awesome.
Right. Dude, I'm so glad, like, just seeing you sitting here talk about it takes me back to the first time that I was around that. And so, you know, I ended up in Austin. I'm newly sober, and it was a very, like, you kind of lose your security blanket once you get sober because you don't have the comfort of being high or drunk to take away the scaries away from all that. And so just being newly sober, kind of stepping back out into the world, luckily I had identified the running thing. And I remember showing up to my first race, downtown Austin, all those people, everybody's got signs and you hear air horns and all that. And I was just like, fucking wow, man. I didn't know things like this were going on when I was not doing well. So for me to be able to see it impact somebody else like that is just the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, and it's cool because like you go there now, you think like, oh, and you see mamas, grandmothers, kids. I'm like, what am I talking about?
Right.
You know, and then even my student's mom, she's the one that kind of organized it. She was the only one doing the half marathon, and she finished. She just kissed her kid and kissed her husband and say, all right, guys, let's go get coffee and food. I was like, you just did 30 miles. Like, for me, it would be like huge. She's like, all right, let's go. And then we're having the burger and talking, and then I was celebrating. I was like, I did 5K, and I'm like sore.
Right.
And this woman just ran, you know, like whatever, 20-some kilometers. And I'm like, I said, no, I'm doing the half marathon next time. So that's my running goal for next year.
Let's go.
And also I won the bucket. You know, they have a belt bucket.
Yeah.
You know, and you walk around, and like I have this little bucket. And if everyone has a big bucket, I'm like, no, I want the big belt bucket.
Right. Yeah, you got to get the big one.
Yeah, that's for sure.
If you do a 100-miler, then you actually get like a belt buckle.
Okay.
An actual buckle. So we'll just keep getting you up there.
All right, let's go.
So for those that are tuning in who may not know who you are, would you please maybe share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you're known for?
You know, my real name is Xande Ribeiro. I'm from Brazil. Alexandre. My nickname is Xande with an X, which sounds weird for a lot of people. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for 34 years. That's all I've done in my life. I'm a black belt. Actually, my black belt anniversary was last week, 24 years as a black belt.
Really?
Which now I can be a 6-degree black belt, but my brother is the one that it's going to, you know, stripe me. I belong to the Ribeiro family. My brother as well is a world champion. So I'm a 7-time world champion in one organization. There's a few organizations that also have titles there. My brother is a 5-time world champion. We both Hall of Fame in Jiu-Jitsu and grappling. There's this big event called the ADCC. Started a long time ago with the Arabic sheiks and all that. It's basically the biggest grappling event in the world. I've won that twice. I'm the winningest fighter on that event. I have like 45 matches and 30-some victories. I have 2 titles on that one. My brother has 2 titles as well. So, you know, and basically my whole passion in life has always been teaching, you know. And that's what I do. I teach Jiu-Jitsu. I do everything around Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu for me is life. Taught me so much, and that's what I do. I teach every day. I teach seminars all over the world. I do have a brand called, my school is called Six Blades Jiu-Jitsu. It's our pillars, and we have schools in about 18 countries around the world, and it's just amazing, man, you know.
18 countries.
Yeah, and counting.
Wow.
You know, we're developing the business. There's a lot of things, you know, because I think each country there's a different cultural approach, and of course America is a different market. It's a way richer market, right? And now, next thing I know, I'm going to Slovakia, where, you know, people don't pay for that stuff. You know? So for me, it's about enabling people to do a living with Jiu-Jitsu, to empower more people. You know what I mean? It's like a virus. You know, you get one person, get the next person, get the next person. Next thing you know, it's a big tribe, and that's what I do. You know, and I work a lot with the branding in my schools, with management. I'm like the brain besides everything. I make the teams and I get them to work. But what I love is to be on the mat teaching. I kind of discovered a little passion to come and talk in shows because I think grappling and Jiu-Jitsu is some sort of like a hidden art, because thanks to UFC, I think martial arts became a big people really know about it. They look at your ears, you're a fighter, you know, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it wasn't cool. So yeah, I think that really helps a lot to be able to go to places and have people interested in come and join a school.
Right. I love being able to talk to somebody else who is using their passion for a living. You know what I mean? I didn't know a world existed where I could ever end up doing that and being able to take all the pain or the things that I've been through and use that to help other people. But to be able to be involved with the fitness world, the running world, the recovery world, and to be able to do these things, like none of it feels like work to me. It's like I get to do these things every day. So I have to imagine it feels similar to you. Like you're living a dream. You get to teach your passion as your form of living, right?
Yes, it was very difficult for us because jiu-jitsu, as a sport back in the day was even in Brazil was almost like criminalized. There was because the way that happened, a little history behind it. The Gracie family, when they develop what's jiu-jitsu today as a sport, right? If I have to talk to you about meaning, philosophy, we have to go all the way back to like Alexander the Great, right? But so the way they started, they wanted to prove the efficiency of jiu-jitsu. Right? Okay, our martial art is the best martial art against anyone in the street because that's what their number one goal, which is still the number one goal, right? So for me, jiu-jitsu as a form of sport is first and foremost is personal development, and then self-defense, and then you go into the idea of the sport, right? A lot of people, they invert that. They start as a sport and forget about personal development and forget about self-defense. So they start to use a lot of media to like, hey, we challenge anyone. So it started as a challenge. Now you're talking about capoeira, karate, all these people going against jiu-jitsu. And of course, when you talk about fighting, now you're talking about egos and problems, and now you have street fights, you know what I mean, and things that are not sanctioned. And yeah, it was a tough time. There was not an industry, right? Jiu-jitsu schools weren't a thing.
Right.
Like it's interesting because karate school, taekwondo schools, there has always been great business models. But jiu-jitsu is just basically a big tribal. I remember if you go tell your girlfriend's dad you do jiu-jitsu, they would say, no, I don't want you to fight to be with this guy. Which some sort of our fault, at that time. There was a lot of fighting. You go to concerts and people are like, oh, you're from jiu-jitsu, or oh, you think you're better than me. That was literally like that. And I'm talking about me being a 12-year-old boy.
Really?
They have to go through this. I'm like, there's an 8-year-old guy looking at me like because I have a jiu-jitsu shirt. So I think that's how it started. But fast forward, I just have to believe a lot into what I felt. You know what I mean? Like I said, I love this, but why this is not different? Why you don't have more girls? Why you don't have more kids? And I just loved it. I was supposed to go to college. I did go to college to go to law school. And, I was like, wow, I just have to be me. I don't have to do anything else. But why all of this is not enabling people to do better?
Right.
Why the schools are dirty? Why we're not doing like maybe social things, and all that happened. So in 1999, it was the first time I came to the U.S. with my brother to teach seminars. I just started law school. So I started coming in.
Law school, huh?
Law school, yeah. I did 3 years of law school. And nothing against lawyers. I'm going to say something. So I'm not a good liar. You know what I mean? Meaning like, someone did something wrong and now you have to bend the rule. It's just how it is, right? It's just law.
Yeah.
So I was very good at ambiental law. That was my favorite thing, you know what I mean? To get companies to comply with the nature. And then my good friend Chris Blanky had a school in Toledo, Ohio, small school, like literally 10 students. And he said like, yeah, like I want to get someone to come and teach. And I told my mom, I was like, hey mom, I had this opportunity to come and teach jiu-jitsu, but I'm going to lock my college for 6 months. Like, okay, got to make sure you come back. So as I coming in, now I'm like 10 students, now I have 15 students, now I have 20 students. Now I'm making dollars at the time, it's still like 3 for 1, 4 for 1. Our money was really good. Now I'm like, wow, I can actually make some money with this, and that's how everything started. And the interesting thing, there was no such thing as the industry of jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There was no methodology, there's no management, there's no sales training, there was nothing. Someone coming in, how much jiu-jitsu? $100. Okay, bye, boom, they leave. Now there's a whole like, hey, how are you doing?
Right.
So there's a training on that. So I'm really happy because I was able to go from nothing to have faith on something, because literally I shot in the dark. We never know this would be the magnitude that it is. If you put in a Google right now, I put jiu-jitsu, there's like probably 50 schools around here. Even in America, there was nothing here. There were like blue belts teaching. Now you're a black belt. That's like, oh my God, you're from Brazil. You're like a semi-god for them. But I kept myself humble and I say, look, I'm just going to try to develop myself, like I said, personal development. The only thing I need to do in jiu-jitsu is get better as a person. I need to be someone that, can speak about jiu-jitsu. I need to be someone that can speak to different audiences. I need to be someone that can like actually pass an information. A lot of people come with a lot of pain. Like the thing with jiu-jitsu, because it's, mostly a martial art into the idea of self-defense, there's a lot of people that come with a lot of pain, lack of confidence. When you actually study about abuse, you see that like literally 80% of people in the world has been abused of some sort, either mental, sexual abuse, women, and there was no women in jiu-jitsu. Now there's so many women fighting jiu-jitsu, it's unbelievable. And that's enabled them to be in a culture where also men respect them, and they can be part of a culture that they can be themselves. They're sweaty, they're maybe they're wearing something like, that's like a no-gi, for example. You wear like a tight little shirt and there's no sexual attribute to this. It's just both two friends grappling and try to actually choke the shit out of each other. And I think that's beautiful, be able to see where this go. And today, I can do a living, not just do a living, but also I created something that allow other people to do the same. When I say I have, schools all over the world, is because through jiu-jitsu now they can also do that. But the difference is they know where they can go. I didn't, and I'm blessed that I was given this opportunity to create something that, like I said, maybe there's a lot of I have a lot of ex-military, veterans, that has huge PTSD. I've had, I have female owners, jiu-jitsu owners, like the leader in a jiu-jitsu school that's mainly males. There's a girl, that has a history of like, the mom say, oh, this is for hookers, if you're just gonna go rab on dudes, so she has to go through the process of develop confidence and her self-respect to be respected by men as well. I don't know, it's beautiful, man. I can talk about 100 million ways about jiu-jitsu.
For sure. Hold on one second. Jason, can we make sure we get behind the scenes pictures with the good camera?
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you. We'll cut that out, right? This? Yeah. All right. The question I want to ask you is, when did you first get introduced to jiu-jitsu? And tell me about your mindset and everything, walking in for your first time, getting on the mat, getting choked, all that stuff. What did that feel like? How old were you?
Well, I think I've been grappling my whole life, right? I did in Brazil, the high schools is not like America. And that's interesting because I always watch American movies, and I was like, why Brazil is not like America? I watch like the wrestling movies, basketball, everything looks so cool. And then you go to the Brazilian freaking places, it's a shitty, soccer fields are better, you know what I mean? But they're still shitty, pardon the word. So I did judo like every kid, because the mom puts the kid in judo. And even back then, when I started jiu-jitsu, just kind of fast forward, I would say, why the moms don't do, I'll put my kid in jiu-jitsu. So I always had that in my mind. I say, why is judo not jiu-jitsu? Well, of course, we're gangsters back in the day. So anyway, I did judo as a little kid. And then, interesting story, I lived in a condo, and in front of one of our neighbors, he was so funny because he likes to give us like candies and stuff, like this older guy. And he had a little square grass on his thing, and we just grapple as a bunch of kids. And I think we had a little thing that we wouldn't fight each other. If we ever had an altercation, we wouldn't actually punch each other but we grappled, even though nobody knew how to grapple, just like two kids holding each other's head. But I knew a little bit already. I didn't know guard as a guard. I didn't know names, but I knew holding a guard, like try to bump someone over. I had good like natural ability to like know what's dangerous, right? Until one day, this kid from inside my guard, right inside my leg, he just grabbed my neck and squeezed. I was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? And then I tapped, and I hate tapping, And I got home and I'm like, rubbed my neck, and my brother started jiu-jitsu about 4 months before, but he never told me, right? Because the age gap, he was more like into girls, into his friends, and I'm like the little brother, and. He came to me like, what happened? I said, well, why? Of course, you're too weak. You should try jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what is jiu-jitsu? Like the word jiu-jitsu just sound weird.
Right.
I was like, well, it's this grappling thing I'm doing. You want to try it? I'm like, yeah, sure. So my mom bought me a gi. Again, spend the money without knowing what's going to happen. We walked in, the Montero brothers. There are 4 brothers. They're all lawyers. Actually, even the older brother is the state prosecutor. Like, they're super intelligent, great family. The father of them is like a judge for the state. There's like a levels of, judiciary in Brazil. So anyway, they're super cool. It's this house, you walk in, and they had like on the back 2 rooms. They have a room for the adults and one room for the kids. It was basically maybe around this big. And we're about 12 kids. And I'm like super like, and I see some kids are like kind of like little attitude. As soon as the guy put this guy mounted on me, I felt claustrophobic. You know what I mean? I was fine because my brother was there, so I had a little bit of like, okay, my brother know people because he's talking to everybody. I'm like, okay, he's friends with people. Like, we don't know. Like, I don't know like if people don't like him. So yeah, and I walked in, and then we were doing the technique, and next thing I know, the guy showed me this Americana. I was like, oh, mount on the person. Okay, mount. Like, everything was easy for me because I already grapple. But now that he's showing me the actual technique, and I'm like, wow, this is like superpowers. That's the first thing I felt like, wow, this is amazing.
Right.
Whoa, this is easy. Like, now I'm like, this is easy to do. But then he put them on the other way, right? Okay, now the guy's mounting on you. I felt claustrophobic. I thought I was going to die. I was like, drawing is not fun. This is not fun. I do never want anybody to get close to me ever again. But I loved it. You know what I mean? And so I think that sense of protection, which still carries to the way I fight today, it still carries on. You know what I mean? And that's how I felt. I felt that I didn't want to draw. And I was very intrigued by the science behind the joint locking, the twisting, the human body, the way the human body works. I just felt like, wow, this is like science. And I really loved science always. And that's how I fell in love with it, and I'm still a scientist today.
Let's go. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So I know, like, I discovered running much like I think you discovered jiu-jitsu. I discovered it later in life, but I did not know how much of what I would learn as a runner or in races or going through adversity, how much that translated to, like, my real everyday life. A lot of it was, like, if I could put myself through running hills in the middle of Texas in the middle of summer at the heat of the day, you know what I mean? A lot of my other daily problems seem a whole lot less when I know I could do that. Has jiu-jitsu taught you good lessons for life? I have to imagine it has.
Oh, every day. Jiu-jitsu is the recreation of life every day. Every day it puts you on check. Because, one, there's always someone better than you at something. You know what I mean? But also, when you're better at something, then somebody also teaches you how to be kind. You know what I mean? So I think with running, or maybe, associate a little bit with what you've been through, because I think you're looking outside a lot of, like, with drugs and everything, and the way life went to you, like, okay, what can I put it in to make me feel better, right? And I think running jiu-jitsu is the opposite. It's how can I put this out? You know what I mean? How can I be in tune with myself and deal with myself? So I think, jiu-jitsu and running is meditation. It's like turn it in so you can figure out who you are. And I think jiu-jitsu really teaches you that, because it gives you a tool, a very dangerous tool. They say, like, give the men the power to know who they are, right? And I think martial arts itself, which are a bit different than running, I would say, it gives you such a powerful tool that you can basically kill a human being, So then you have to deal with your ego. Then you have to deal with your pride. Then you have to deal with injuries, expectations, And every day that's what happens, You're in a bad position. What are you going to do? You're going to get desperate. You can't pull a cigarette and escape from side control. Now you go home and like, man, I'm out of gas. What can I do? Well, maybe I'll eat better. Maybe I'll eat better food. You know what I mean? So that's going back to what I said in the beginning. The personal development starts there. I have one of my students. He actually owns I hope he doesn't hate that I'm saying this. He owns a vape company. I'm like, do you vape? He's like, yeah. I'm like, why? That thing's gonna kill you.
Right.
Like you come here in this stage of your life and you wanna, do better. You wanna do better for yourself. You wanna be able to train more, right? He's like, yeah. So you gotta start to compromise certain things. You know what I mean? Your lifestyle gonna be better. Your sex life with your wife gonna be better. And then the other day he's like, man, everything's better. Like I said, it's pretty cool. So
Right.
even your relationships with people.
Yes.
I think the world today, it's very cold. You know what I mean? And at least my team, we're a hug culture. We do not shake hands. We hug each other all the
There
time.
you go.
You know what I mean?
That's
It's free hugs all the
That's
time.
That's all our culture too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because I think Jiu-Jitsu really gave a lot of people this ability to be vulnerable in a sense of like, hey, embracing. You know what I mean? To be embracing. I remember one of my students in Canada, very cold guy, very odd person. He said, Shawn, the number one thing that Jiu-Jitsu gave to me is that now I know how to hug. I was like, wow. So each person is a thing.
Wow.
The impressive thing about Jiu-Jitsu, like I could go here and say, man, there's this million things that I learned from Jiu-Jitsu, from grit, from discipline, from dealing with my ego, from what I mean. Even though I'm a Michael Jordan of my sport, I'm still just a person in flesh and blood, and there's no difference between you and I.
Right.
You know what I mean? Besides, you're 6'4".
Right.
I
mean, you're a big boy too.
Jiu-Jitsu helps.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's impressive, because each person, and that's what I love about what I do as a teacher, as a leader, that I got to like almost feel what they feel. You know what I mean? Like when they look at me and they, oh man, I did this arm lock, and you can see the smile. Like for me, what's an arm lock? I have like literally hundreds of arm locks in competition. Now you have this one guy that walks in. He's a businessman, and he just hits an arm lock, and for him, it's like the greatest thing in the world. Same as running for me that day.
Right.
So I think every day really teaches me a lot. You know what I mean? Some days I'm kind of like a little sad, and then I walk in, there's this little kid like, hey, it's insane. Like they're like bright your day, Even it's always something. I think I don't know if it's called what law is called, but I had so many moments in my life that I was putting myself as a victim and being upset and be a little, and then something happens. You know what I mean? One day I was like super sad about like complaining about something, and then I walk into the seminar, and this little girl, like her head would hit my thigh, and she just grabbed my thigh. Sensei Xande, I have always wanted to meet you. Oh my God, I love you. And I never seen a girl before, but like she's a student of a student, so like they had my picture there. So I'm like, like they're like, oh my God, So those things, and I'm like, what am I doing? So I have had many what am I doing moments in my life, you know what I mean? But of course we're human, right?
For sure.
You hate to do this. So I think like the biggest thing with Jiu-Jitsu, it's about stepping back and knowing that like, okay, if this is happening to me, there's a reason for it. You know what I mean? There's a lesson that I'm gonna learn with it. So I think that's the biggest thing in Jiu-Jitsu. I went from like injuries to like moments like this, from think I'm too much, and now they smack you in the face and say, shut up and do your job, because, you know what I mean, you know better than anyone else.
The, running is kind of what got me back healthy, got me back to doing what I need to be doing, got me back to the right mind frame. The gym added a whole nother layer for me. And so what kept me away from the gym for a long time was I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to go in there and feel like I looked silly or anything like that. Then I got my heart broke, so that kind of nudged me into the gym, and I figured it out. And so it was the first thing I had identified, I think, in adulthood, where it was like I couldn't get enough information. I'm watching videos, I'm following people, I'm just soaking up all the information, checking out books at the library. But like you're saying about you have a passion for teaching jiu-jitsu, teaching people what to do in the gym gave me a whole nother respect for it. And it made me a better lifter, better at working out, because it does something to where you can understand it better once you're teaching it to somebody else. But much like you're saying, like I've had clients where it's like, these clients are why I do this, because it means so much to them. It has such a big impact, and it's just so special to me that they could get a piece of what I've been able to get out of it. I always have one client that I talk about, and he would be an hour early for every session we ever had. He'd be in there, he'd be warming up, he'd be working out, he'd be ready to go on time. And then I'd take him to a workout. He would stay an hour afterwards. He'd go over every exercise that I give him until he perfected the form. Oh, wow. Then he'd do cardio. I watched him lose weight. I watched him get a girlfriend. I watched him start traveling, get his own place. Like, I watched his life transform, and it was all because of what he started doing in the gym. His confidence started going up. He was more able to go out and talk with people, get a job, and it's like, man, like, the way what this has done for his life is like, this is why I do what I do. Do you have anybody's story that of students you have or somebody that you know that jiu-jitsu absolutely transformed their life?
Myself and all of them, basically.
Yeah.
It's incredible, man. Like, there was this one kid, especially kids, you know what I mean? Like, main thing is like how their posture, how they shake your hand, right? There's this one funny story I always say. There was this kid. Now he's a fighter, and he saves people's lives.
Okay.
You know? He's like short, little like Mexican Filipino kid. He comes in, hands in, shoulders down, boom, and I can already see very shy. And I say, hey man, and I'm like, when someone comes to my gym, you know, at my school, I'm like, what's up? You know what I mean? Let's go. You know, like I show you exactly who I am.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my students, like, I'm not gonna come here and be all business formal. Like, if I'm not bad day, I'm not bad day. And guess what? My bad days are the best days for you because I'm going to push you.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready, if I'm too much having fun, it's probably going to be the day you're like, I didn't even break a sweat. So I come in and I say, what's your name? He's like, Jesse. I was like, what's your name? John? No, just, hey man, look at me. And like, the kid is like 20-some. I was like, oh. You can see he's like stuttering to talk to me. You know, maybe he's afraid because of the jiu-jitsu gym, blah, 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 blah. And he was my favorite. Like, some kids, I know they need a little bit of a tough love. You know, I'm all about tough love. Like, if you're doing something wrong, I'll be like, what you doing? He's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? They get all super scared, but it's like, hey, this is life. You know what I mean? Is the car they're going to pull off at you? You have to have the right reflexes. Right. But also, after a while, that's not going to phase you anymore. Right? I'll be like, Jesse, no, he's like, oh. Anyway, fast and forward, 3 months later, now I cannot get Jesse to shut up. He's the one that talks the most. He talks to everybody. He shakes everybody's hand. Now I have to tell him to shut up. You know what I mean? Hey, shut up, man. You know what I mean? Like because he was so much like out of his own shelf. Right. You know what I mean? And you know, I can mention like, you know, the veterans. You know what I mean? They're the biggest. Like, that needs the most help. You know what I mean? Because everything they did in life in war was ready, kill, violence. You know what I mean? If you go strong, I go stronger. You know, but in jiu-jitsu is different. You go strong, I go softer. You know what I mean? Until I can go strong again. So to break that barrier is very difficult. And of course, you know, next thing I know, they're like rubbing an elbow on you, and their reaction is very odd. And then sometimes they're the sweetest guys outside of the mat. Yeah. So to create that balance is extremely important for them. You know, I've had a student that can't sleep because they always are wired. You know, if they get maybe smashed in the class, they throw a tantrum. You know what I mean? So I think that's a lot of that. You know, girls, especially girls, they come in, you can barely touch them. You know, like usually my test, especially with anyone, when I'll talk, I'll just put my hand on their shoulders. And let's say 9 out of 10 girls do like this. They do a little like shoulder, like, don't touch me, you know what I mean, type of thing, right? And then I'm like, even the way I teach, the approach is different. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, I'm going to do this. So I always tell them, okay, I'm going to grab you here. I'm going to put you in this position. You can say that. You can see they're very, you know, very shy or something. And then usually after a while, there's always a story, unfortunately, which really pisses me off about the male society. You know what I mean? We're so strong. We don't need this, you know. I blame our kind for that, you know what I mean? For not allowing the women to be more safe. Yeah. You know, even martial arts shouldn't be a thing in a way, you know what I mean? Because if we would be better people, none of that would be happening. And man, when they turn around, they're the one, they're like headlocking you, you know what I mean? And talk to you and be all outgoing. The kids are the best. Right. You know, the kids coming in, there was this one kid, his father really wanted him to do jiu-jitsu. And the kid like would never leave his father. And I'll be like, hey, sit on the mat. No. Next day, he sits on the mat. But he still never towards us. And he's like, man, I think it's not for him. I'm like, hey, we're right in this process. It's okay. He'll do it. And he walks in the mat. Next thing I know, he's putting the gi on. Next thing I know, he comes to me like, hey, Xande, how are you? He shakes my hand and goes to the mat. So seeing all of that, how do you get tired?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes, like, I wake up and I think, man, what am I doing, man? I can't wait to see my little kids. There's this one kid, he would come in, hey, Sensei Xande. I said, what? Time for curls, because I used to, like, do curls. Mm-hmm. He would grab his gi and do curls. Now I can't. He's too heavy.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's like, I was waiting for that day. So it's so special, you know what I mean? Like, every day is something so special, from the kids to the girls to the older man, that they think they come in here, they can't move. Now they're smashing people and they're beating a younger guy. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's a good little ego, little massage on the ego, when like an older guy that can barely move will stand up. Now he stands up.
Right.
Now he comes in. I have a lot of businessmen. They come in and say, hey, my business partner was asking about the scratch on my eye. I told him, you should see the other guy. You know what I mean? It's so interesting, man. Like, it's like you see like growing man that has like millions of dollars in the banking account, but their pride at that moment is because they can say they have a scratch from a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, man. You know what I mean? I think grappling, running, I think moving is what this society needs. We choose still. I don't know if that happens to you. Like, a lot of times when I'm going through things where I want to do something that I don't want to do, let's say if you want to, smoke weed or drink alcohol in your case. So a lot of times what I do, which I tell people, I say, man, anytime you have a problem, get on the bike and do sprints on the bike. So why? Because you're shutting your mind off. Mm-hmm. So running, like for me, and now it's a question for you, because in Jiu-Jitsu, you can't really get into your thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you think you're late, you know what I mean? You can't be like, oh, okay, I have to pay this bill. No, if you think about that. But sometimes running...
You get choked out.
Yeah, so for you, because I remember even when I asked you, hey, would you do a marathon? I say, bro, I 100 miles. So for you, like, I guess I'll give it back to you. So what was the process, like, when you were still in that phase of, like, I'm sober, but I'm not, and then you found running and you found exercise. When did that voice that would put you down start to shut up?
I think probably the first time I went for a run sober. So I ran in the military. I'd ran growing up in sports. Running, I was never a runner growing up.
You just ran because you had to.
Because of sports, getting conditioned. So running was punishment. Never did I know or understand the benefits running would have with me, that it would transform my life. But I do remember going to my first run. I was in rehab, and I went to run a 2 mile run. I showed up with a huge ego. I was like, oh, I'm an athlete growing up. I was still smoking a pack of Newports a day. I don't know what I was thinking.
So you're sober of drugs, but you're still smoking cigarettes. You're still smoking cigarettes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You gotta.
Easy. I know.
You can't do all in one. I mean, you could, but it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah. So make manageable changes. So heroin first, then cigarettes.
Okay.
But I just remember going for that run, and I was dead last at the run. I come back, I finished 2 miles. My lungs were on fire. I was like, oh, what am I doing? But I remember going back to the treatment center, and I just felt a sense of accomplishment. And it had been so long since I had felt that before. And it was like, I want to feel that again, because that felt better to me than any high felt. And so I would say right around that time is when that voice started getting quiet. And then running for me, like you're saying with Jiu-Jitsu, I talked about it on a show recently. It was like a dual thing for me, because I could go out for a run and it could be completely meditative, where my mind's clear and I'm just able to just be present in what's happening and do that. But I'm also able to go on a run, and if I want to work out my problems or really start thinking about everything, it helps me work out problems in ways that I couldn't before, where I might be all pissed off and I'm ready to fight with my wife or somebody in the world, whatever like that, and I can go for a run and I think about it all and I come back. I'm cool, calm, collective. I've thought about it. I know how I'm going to handle the situation, and it always seems to go better.
Yeah, because like in your case, like on the first 2 miles, you had no choice.
Right.
Because you out of shape.
Yep.
You actually just telling yourself, you idiot.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
What am I doing?
Now you're like, this is easy.
Yeah.
You know, which means now you can somehow control it, because sometimes when I'm running, I'm like, okay, stop thinking, just think about your breath. And now I'm like, I can only hear my breath, right? I don't hear anything else. But I think once you're a great runner or whatever you're doing, they even call I don't think I have found the runner's high yet. But you know, do you manage that? Like, do you like when you run and maybe like, can you sometimes like, okay, I'm going to tweak my training now where now I can shut this off because now I cannot really consciously shut it off?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I think I'll speak for me in my case.
Yes,
I don't know.
yes.
I don't know if it's all, but once I discovered running, once I discovered the community, I was so excited. Like I was on fire. When I discovered that, it like my world, it was like somebody just flipped all the world was colorful. We went from black and white to color all of a sudden. I was so excited and so inspired to run these races, to go be around all these new people that I knew, that in all honesty, I never looked back. There was never a time where I was like, man, I wonder if I'm going to get high again. I was so excited to be doing what I was doing. I was just all in. You know what I mean? In many ways, it was my new drug. I would have to later learn that balance, because somebody asked me the question. They're like, well, what if you get injured and you can't run? And I never thought about that. It was like, man, if I lose this now. So then I started understanding like running is a tool. It's not my end all be all, but I have the gym. I have, you know, whatever various forms of that it is, but just understanding it's a tool, but I can't put all my eggs into that basket.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what are you going to feel? Because I've been in situations where I thought I was going to, because of injuries, I thought I wasn't going to do Jiu-Jitsu anymore, you know? And then, of course, it's okay. Let me go back to the extra bottle of whiskey, you know what I mean? So, and at the time, I think today, if I don't have the fighting, I think I can do other things. Still related to Jiu-Jitsu in a sense,
Right.
you know what I mean? Even if I get injury, I still can teach.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, do you feel like in the beginning, probably there's a process. Like, do you think right now you could take a vacation and none of those, let's say, voices will like, see, we're in the beach right now. You know, you're and your wife. Maybe you can have a drink of, you know, whatever, tequila or whatnot. You know what I mean? Because I can see you're a high achiever now. You run, you're doing. Do you think today, maybe it's a personal question, do you think today you're doing all of this because you're afraid that voice comes back? Or do you feel that you already became the person that deep inside you are who you are because you love being sober, you love just being that, you know, taking everything away from you?
Yeah, I think the latter of what you said. We go on vacations. My wife's not in recovery. She drinks. You know, I'm so happy with my life now that like that's not an option for me. You know, there's in the recovery world, in the addiction world, like everybody knows, you know, relapse could be right around the corner. It could happen to anybody. But, you know, I'm coming up on 8 years sober. Once you get there, you start being able to catch the warning signs. And so probably about 6 months ago, I went through a tough time mentally. I started suffering from depression out of nowhere. And that was the first time in 8 years that the first thought in my head was like, I could get high over this. I never thought I was gonna. But it was a thought like I could. But then in the same thought, I was like, man, I'd probably rather just not be here than ever get high again. And so that's, you know, now we're talking about like, I'd rather just not be on earth anymore than to ever get high again. So for me, it's not an option to go back down that road. But I saw myself in that instance. I realized in that moment that I had been given so much of my mind and my life into work. I wasn't focusing on my home life. I wasn't focusing on the gym. I wasn't focused on running. And here I find myself in this tough mental place. Well, now I had the tools to understand, to be like, wait a minute, I'm having some pretty dark thoughts. I need to go get around my community. I need to go find that healthy outlet again. I need to get back into running. And so within days, I was back at running groups. I was running races. That's the whole reason I signed up for the half marathon. If that never happened, you and I would have never met. But that's why I was running that race, because I knew I needed to get back to that. So as for me, like, it's not an option, but it can happen, and you just have to you just have to understand, like, it's always there. But if I started having feelings like that, where me and my wife go on a vacation and all of a sudden I start feeling like, man, I could have a drink right now, like, it's on me at this point. Like, I need to, why am I having this feeling? What happened? What am I around? And oftentimes you turn it in. It's like, am I being dishonest? Am I being, you know what I mean, selfish in some way? Am I resentful at somebody that I'm letting it get to me? And so now just being able to understand, why do I feel this way? Because I know I've relapsed more times than any of us can count. Never one time was it worth it. There was never one time where I'm like, man, that was a good idea. I'm glad I went and did that.
Yeah.
And so now I know that, though.
Yeah. It's very difficult, like, sometimes to find the balance, because everybody talks about balance, but there is no balance sometimes in that world. You know, I'll give you the example, like on last Thursday, I went celebrating, and I was so happy that I had way too many. And I woke up like shit, you know, and I spent my whole Friday, you know, after the UFC grappling that my guy won, because I was just so happy, you know, I was just so happy. Oh, okay, let's get a bottle, whatever. And really made me like, I was like, man, like at that moment, I'm like, I don't want to ever drink anymore. You know what I mean? But then my whole point is like, look what I lost. I lost my whole Friday. I could be doing business. I could be talking to Donna White. I could be training. I could be empowering more people. But I'm at home feeling sick.
Yep.
Like, you know, I wanted to eat some stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if my stomach can deal with that. You know what I mean? It's very interesting how that works. You know what I mean? And you're like, and maybe in your case, you feel like, man, if I go back drinking, how many people I'm going to disappoint? How much opportunities I'm going to lose in my life? Because now you're driven by that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to like come to the academy with my face all, you know, and they keep like, hey, Shawn, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
It's different when, and you have to feel the same way. It's different. Like now in my life, I know that there's people that write me every day, that I talk to every day, that they look to me for answers. They look, you know, they're looking for that strength, whether they're watching this or just talking to me on there because they're going through something. So it definitely adds a level. Like, you know, when you go in your school, you got to be on. You're the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, I have to, if this is the part, I have to be the part.
Sometimes it's okay to be in a bad day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But not because I'm hungover or because, you know, I did way too many, you know what I mean? And I think it's important, especially nowadays, I think, with the way everything is so, like, out there, everything is so accessible to people, with all the mental stuff and this addiction of healing, you know what I mean? Everybody's looking for outlets to heal themselves. I think we're in a time that people just have to shut off and be sober, you know what I mean? Like, deal with your own shit on yourself, you know? If you look at the community in Austin now people stop drinking, now they're mushroom. They stop mushroom, they go ayahuasca. Like, I've done ayahuasca. You know, I run a plant medicine, but it's not like, all right, I'm okay with that. Now it's time to go back to life and, like, deal with life.
Right.
And next thing I know, okay, what's the next two? What's the next two? I said, next two, my friend, is go run a race.
Right.
You know, the next two is like, you know, go work out and get big muscles. It's not about, like, you know, putting more. You know,
Right.
in Jiu-Jitsu, I tell a lot of my guys, it's about less. You know, it's about less. Like, why are you thinking so much? Oh, I have all these strategies, this. I say, bro, here's the deal. It's a fight. If you have to go to your fifth strategy, you probably already lost. You know what I mean? So go back to the first one. Keep it simple. You know, because I think that's what it is. And that's why what coming back to competition this year really gave me. I'm sharper. I sleep early. You know what I mean? I can wake up. Like, even if I, you know, if maybe, you know, it's a day that I slept 3 or 4 hours, but I still have the energy for the other ways. You know what I mean? It's not that like, oh, I'm struggling now. You know, I don't have the energy for everything. You know, and again, going back to the idea, I think today we need people like you for sure. They're like, hey, you can do this. You know what I mean? What are you doing? The healing is within.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, our body, this thing is God gave this tool to us. It's the biggest piece of art in the world, and you allowing yourself to be out of shape, you know what I mean? Sit in a desk all the time, say that you don't have time for a 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
You know, I get it, you know, I was even talking to my friend, you know, like, I say, Shawn, you don't know what depression is, you know? Like, you don't know what that is. Like, you don't want to do anything. So now I turn back to you again, like, what happens, like you said, you have depression. So I don't think I have ever felt that I can't do something. Like, okay, well, I did have a moment in my life where I was just drinking a lot because I thought I was going to stop jiu-jitsu. So what would you say for someone that needs to be physical, right? Needs to get tuned into their bodies to heal something, right? Because I think the whole mind, body, and spirit, everybody gets mind and spirit, they forget. It's not vanity.
Yeah.
Our body is our castle, right?
Yes.
So what would you recommend for someone that maybe knows, the person consciously knows that needs to wake up and go for a 10-minute walk but can't?
What would I tell them? So the biggest part I would think would be to first get them around people, right?
Okay.
And so let's get you plugged in with a community of people that are going to help keep you accountable, that you want to go be around. When I left treatment, I went to treatment 12 times. I went to rehab 12 different times over the course of my addiction. Over the course of 15 years of hard drugs and alcohol, 12 times I was in and out. Where are we going with this? I just forgot. Damn it.
How do you get, because people talk a lot about depression, right? Like you mentioned
about
depression.
what they
Yeah, because a lot of people say like, I just want to sleep. I don't want to do anything. Oh, I'm out of shape. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm too weak. I'm too that. I'm going to wait for the perfect moment to start.
Yeah.
How do you get someone to just say, hey, forget about this?
Yeah.
Especially with me, like, I think I was very driven, my greed, and one day I just realized it's the change. It just boom, clicks. But I never had that to a long period of time.
Right.
You know what I mean? How do you get someone that maybe is watching us today and feel like, oh, I can't do it because I'm a little too big. Well, I can't do it because I'm depressed.
Right.
And now they accept that. But depression is something very seriously that, again, I don't think I know that well because I don't think I ever felt. Or maybe I have, I just don't know. You know what I mean? It's a serious emotional, I don't know if it's a disease or just a stage. So what did it work for you, for example?
So there was a woman who's been on the podcast, and I talk about her quite a bit. Her name's Dr. Abby. She got her doctorate degree when she was like 21 years old, beyond smart. But her specialty is human behavior. And so she talks a lot about depression. And what we do is we let our mind sit there and control our body. So we sit there, we lay in bed, I'm depressed, I can't get up, I can't do anything. Well, you can get up and walk and go to the bathroom, right? So if you can get up, you can get up. Now, it's okay to feel depressed if you're feeling depressed. Feel it. Like, understand it, explore it, all that stuff. But it doesn't have to control your actions. So just because I'm super depressed and I don't want to get up out of bed doesn't mean I can't get up out of bed. And so someone has to ask themselves, like, are you miserable enough to try something new? If you're not, then you're going to keep doing what you're doing. But if you're miserable enough where you're like, I can't do this anymore, then the hardest part is just saying, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go walk. I'm going to go outside right now and walk for 10 minutes. Once you've made the decision you're going to do it, the hardest part is over. The walking's not the hard part, walking out the door, your shoes, none of that. Just making the decision. The thing that helped me was having that running community, getting in touch with all these new people, because I was so excited to go be around them. And so these other 12 times that I went to treatment, I would leave and I'd be like scared. I was nervous. I didn't know what lay ahead. This last time, I was so excited because I had something that lit a fire up under my ass. I had discovered running. I had races I was getting ready to run. I had this amazing group of people I couldn't wait to go be around. I wasn't thinking about drugs. I wasn't thinking about depression. I was thinking, what will get me with them more? How can I go be around them more? And so the community aspect is huge. It's just like, I would imagine most people, for me in running, running is a social thing, right? If I ask somebody to go for a run, I don't expect you to run my pace. I don't expect you to run my distance. If you and I are going to go run for today, I'm going to run your pace, your distance, and we're just going to go run so we can hang out. But imagine you ask people to come to Jiu-Jitsu. You told me the first day we met, I got to come roll, and instantly I was like, whoa, and I'm coming up with excuses because instantly in our head, it's like, I know I can't compete with him at this. Like it's, it makes me nervous being around like that. And so it's just getting people to understand. It's like, hey man, we're just going to go for a walk. That's it. And so having those people that are willing to kind of pull you out of it. And then once you get out there and do it, much like you were, I'm sure, a little nervous to run your first race, but then you do it and have an amazing time. And you're like, oh, I could have been doing this whole time.
Yeah.
And so that for me was what got me out there doing it. And once I got out there, I show up to my first race, half of Austin's out there. Nobody cares if you're fast. Nobody cares if you're slow. They don't care what you look like. They don't care what shoes you have on. All they care about is you're out there. That's it. And I was like, oh, this is it right here.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think it is what the world needs is a good community. Because we're social beings, right?
Yes.
We always talk about this internalization, stoicism, you are doing your own, your choice, your. But we are, the biggest organ in our body is our skin. You know what I mean? We crave, a hug and attention, that interaction. You know what I mean? So I remember even talking to you. I say I want the running community. And maybe this is just my strategy now. Maybe it's another push for me to run more. I say, hey, I want the running people to learn about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because now I'm concerned about that very shape, gorgeous woman or whoever that is on Bartow Springs running in a little place that's a little dark and someone comes at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think
and that's very real.
You know what I mean? And I think that's something that now I'm like concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because how many, like a lot of times, like I'm going to like Zilker Park and I see a lot of women running, just on their own with the little iPods on their phones. They disappear in the world. We never know what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's sick people there, So this is something that I'm definitely like where I'll talk to you. Like, we're talking about when I got we don't care about shoes, but I love my Diodoras.
Yeah.
I've been using for like every day since then.
Let's go.
You know what I mean? And that's something that now I'm like very focused on. You know what I mean? I'm very like, I really want safe people running. You know what I mean? It could be anyone. It could be a person just robbing your phone. We never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With the growth of, the civilization, the problems will start. You know what I mean? Austin is getting so big, and you never know. Maybe someone's a crackhead and thinks that phone going to get them more drugs, and we don't know.
Right.
Men and women, kids, they all got to learn how to, number one, be aware. I think that's the most important thing. Like, and also I think that with martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu, it just changes your aura.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was doing a study. We talk about like studies when you talk about, abusers or rapists and stuff. It's like it's a disease on them that they know.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like when I watch, documentaries, they just know. I said, no, I just looked at her and knew that was my prey. And it's impressive. And how do we change that? Like teach them a tool.
Yeah.
That now their aura just like, that's not something that I can get close to. You know what I mean? I think we can do something very special. And I'm really looking forward to like really get you on the mat.
We'll do it.
You know what I mean? But I think like the concern about running is different, right? Because now it's just like it's like, oh, can I handle running, right? In your case, like, this motherfucker gonna choke me a lot. You know what I mean? I don't want to break my arm, right? Because I think it's understandable, right? Like, if you hurt your knee or your hip, now you can't run.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
right.
It's an issue. So
I got no problem tap. I'll tap quick.
Well,
I don't want to, but I'll do it to not get hurt.
That's okay. When I put the hands on you, I'll know what your first thing is, which is one thing that I'm very good at, especially like in my fighting. When I put the hands on my opponent, I can feel they're either too nervous, they're too stiff or not. And that's how I change my element. I can be water, I can be raw, I can be fire, I can be air, you know what I mean? And I think that's what's important, at least in fighting, when you're grappling there. Different than fighting, because fighting can get punched in the face. So you have to be 100% there all the time. But with the jiu-jitsu, sometimes the technique gives you a little leeway.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I think the community, like you said, it's super important. I think we should always surround ourselves to people with the same mentality. And that's actually something that I always tell people. So, Xande, what's the difference about an average person to a great person? I say many of the times the people you surround yourself with. Our team.
Important.
Yeah, our team, being together for like, people really say that our bond in our team is huge. People like, why you guys are hugging so much? Why you guys are always laughing? Say, well, because we have fun and also we can kick ass.
Yeah.
That's a good part about it. And it's something that I always say, just surround yourself with the people. Mm-hmm. Now, if I tell you, I need you to just attack my foot. Even though you like takedowns, I'm just going to attack your foot, because even though you're going to lose the practice, but you're helping me because you're doing something that relates to what I'm going to face out there.
Right.
And I think that's extremely important, And with running also, I remember, just watching people, let's go. And you see someone, you're like, yeah, I can do this too. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's almost like this little energy that just bring you to go forward.
Right.
But on the way down, like on the hill, I had to actually brake, and my quads went fire.
Right.
I hated it. No, I didn't hate it. I just didn't know the proper technique to run downhill.
I got you. I got you on that. Man, it's funny. Like we rode a little bit when I was in the military, but nothing big. I did go to a couple classes here and there, but again, nothing big. But I've always been a huge fan of jiu-jitsu, and I would constantly training people in the gym. I would have parents come up to me that would talk to me about their kids wanting to get them into the gym, and I would always like, the gym's great, lift weights and everything, but go do jiu-jitsu. Go do jiu-jitsu. Watch the confidence it's going to give them. I'll explain to them behind the idea behind UFC 1, the Gracies, and having Hoist, who is the little brother, like the whole concept of like this was meant for smaller people to be able to defend themselves against bigger people. So I've always tried to push people towards jiu-jitsu, even though I don't do it to myself. But I heard you recently on something, and the way you were talking about jiu-jitsu, it was beautiful. And basically you were talking about people think jiu-jitsu, this is what it is, but it's more about like leverage. And so like my question for you is, I would have to imagine you go more off feel than sight with jiu-jitsu. Like you could feel people's pressure, their weight shift, feeling where you're at on the ground and stuff like that. Is that true, or is it more visual?
You could use visual, but the thing is like you can't really change, like, because like if you look at things now, just talking about science now, right? Before I talk about what you're talking about, like for example, if I'm passing your guard here, like I'm on top of you, if I look away, where my energy is going? Away. So the eyesight is very important for direction. All right. So if you want your weight and your position to be in a certain position, your eyesight, called drishna in yoga, right? Like, when you look, like try to turn your head to the left and look right. You can't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a lot with that. So like, it's not about that. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of looking. Okay, maybe. Okay, where's the grip? Okay, he has a grip there, but it's 100%, in my opinion, feeling. One of the best classes I ever taught. His name is Ron Burgerman. He's been TED Talks. He's a big Philadelphia, money guy, financial guy. So anyway, long story short, he liked chemistry growing up. So his father gave him those alchemy thing. Long story short, that thing blows up. He loses a finger, loses his eyesight.
Oh, man.
He walks in the streets of Philadelphia and he's blind. And I remember, like, and my brother's like, man, we're going to teach you Ron. What we're going to do, what's going to do. I was like, shit, I don't know. Okay, let's do it with him. I swear, man. I say, okay, this is how you do it. Dum, 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 dum. He'll do it right away. You know what I mean? So it's interesting because the learning process could be different. Some people like if I look at something, it's like I transform myself there. I'm very much like this. If I see you running, it's like I'm you, right? I have this little, I don't know, this avatar type of gift. Some people like, oh, can I look? Like sometimes I'm teaching a technique with somebody, and then I'm using you as a guy, so you know what's happening, right? You know, okay, the grip is here. I can guide you through the gripping, but sometimes you need to see. Oh, can I see where the grip is? I'm like, it's on your hip, like, you know what I mean? But the teaching part is very different. Some people learn by doing, by watching, by other persons doing, but in the end, grappling, it's okay. Let's say it's 99% how you feel. You know what I mean? I'll teach you an arm lock. You need to stop for a second and, okay, this is how it feels, a good position. So you start to feel what good positioning is after a while, because your body just knows. And then you go from there. I'm never really looking, okay, I'm going to look over there, because no, I just grab it. I have this little thing. So people don't know, like, I'm known for my unpassable guard. It's been 20 years since nobody scored 3 points on me. So there's two positions. It's called a side control and a mount. So there's been 20 years, maybe to the day, that nobody ever scored 3 points on me from passing my guard. So I'm known for that. I'm known by the diamond guard, right? So sometimes I go to my seminars and I do a little Houdini drill. I basically just close my eyes and I go like this and I tell people to pass my guard and I can't.
Really?
Because they think you need to see it. You just
Yeah.
need to know. You just need to know the fundamental elements that you're protecting.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point on, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, one of the things that we do, we protect our head, right? So if you're passing towards my right, like if you're here, I cannot let you use your left hand in my neck. So what I'll do, I'll put my hand in here. I don't need to know that your hand is here or not because you need to do something here. Because as soon as you touch, my hand is already there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I can just like keep my hand there. I don't have necessarily, okay, I'm going to grab it.
Yeah.
You know, I could grab it if I have a strategy. But in general, it's more about avoiding the spaces you can control, you know, versus like, I'm going to anticipate that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just in a fundamental level. You know, of course, I want to grab it and control it and do something with it.
Right.
You know, but definitely, I love it. Like, sometimes I'm like training for like an hour. I'm like, it's been 5 minutes.
Right.
It's insane.
Dude, I could just sit here and listen to you talk about jiu-jitsu, to be honest.
I can go forever, brother.
So let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, that sounds cool, but I could never do jiu-jitsu. Who are the primary people that should be in there to go discover jiu-jitsu?
Everyone.
I knew you were going to say that.
Everyone can do that, you know. Can I tell you 2 stories?
Please.
First story. Worlds 2002. That's when I found out in life, like, what the fuck, right? That was my first what the fuck moment. So, this guy's name is Fabiano. I still yet, you know, like if you look at me like, oh, poor Xande, like pity, like a pity eye. So, World 2002, I'm in like the best shape of my life at that point. I fought the absolute division. So the absolute division is like all weight divisions together, right? So I end up losing the semifinal for the guy end up winning, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow. I go from like losing 2001 to like already top 3 in the world in the absolute division, which is the greatest division there is. And then I'm going to fight my division.
Because that's all about just technique. Doesn't matter about weight or anything, right?
Well, there are weight divisions, but there is a division. It's the only martial art that you can do in an absolute division. You're going to see an ant beating an elephant.
Gotcha.
Judo, impossible.
Right.
MMA, it would be a murder. So anyway, so I fought a guy. I was like 90 kilos. He was like 120 kilos. So it's like 260, and I'm like 200. Mm-hmm. Super even match. He flipped me. He got 2 points on me. So anyway, next day I'm like, pride. Oh yeah, I'm gonna win. I'm already walking like a little over, right? Like, I'm gonna win this. So boom, it's mine. Because of course, I had the confidence, but I think on the last day I was a little bit too much. I think it was a lesson for me. Because it's been a lesson for literally 23 years. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I got one of the best guys. Actually, I got the guy that actually won 2 years in a row. And then when I came back healthy, I beat him to win. You know, the guy was great.
Okay.
We're fighting.
Who was it?
Jefferson Moura.
Okay.
He lives in Brazil. He just teaches there. So he won 02, and then he closed the division 03, and then I beat him 04. Okay. It's my first world title.
All right.
So that says how much in good shape I was. So anyway, we started, and my brother was fighting. So I'm like this, and I look. When I look, he did the technique where he grapevines his legs around and twists my knee and breaks my knee, like my ACL, whatever. Mm-hmm. Boom! Right away, I drop down, I'm crying. Fuck shit, boom. I can't continue. I get off. I'm crying. My brother, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, oh, I got hurt. No. I say, stop crying. I say, I can't stop crying. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't deserve this. And I start to go into that idea of like, fuck this, I'm going to win this. Like, the materialization of winning was greater than my will to be a champion inside myself. Mm-hmm. That's how I compare it today. I was going to win. Like, oh my God, I was going to win. And I'm crying up the stairs. And my brother's like, kind of like pushing people away. And I look down for literally half a second, like this. That was the moment. Mm-hmm. But that moment for me was an eternity. This guy looks at me, and I can see this half a second of pity in his eyes, like, oh, poor Xande, you crying. Oh, can I just pet you? Like that type of feeling. And then he scoops so I can go to the stairs. The guy had no legs.
Damn.
And I'm complaining about a twisted knee.
Right.
Because I wasn't going to be a champion.
Right.
And that guy's like was a brown belt. You know, he had his skateboard and he just scooped it. Like he was like, and I said, stop. I told my brother, stop. I can walk. Barely, but you know, I walk, like, high five. He like kind of knuckle him a little. He just knuckled me. Cause you know my brother was already a big champion, so everybody knew me anyway. And I sat down like, what are you doing to yourself, bro? Like literally, like I'm not even care if I lose now. Well, I'm like just like debating my life decisions. You know what I mean? I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
There's a lot of, going back to your question, there's a big part of Jiu-Jitsu community. You know what I mean? Like people that has no limbs, like the military. There's a guy that has no arms. I've taught a lot of like tetraplegic people. One of my best friends is a tetraplegic black belt.
Really?
You know, I teach him what to chokes. He can't move from here to here. When I train with him, I tie my legs and I can use my legs. So it's him and I. It's still fun. It's still very adaptable.
Right.
You know, on that sense.
Yeah.
You know, another story. I'm like, I had a little argument with my ex. I'm like, again, teaching class, super rude, and this guy sends me a message. He's a bodybuilder today. Hey, Xande, my name is Tyler. I want to come to your class. And I'm like, pissed off. Again, same mindset, but now just an everyday. And I look, I see a wheelchair. This guy just freaking like a sea whale.
Yeah.
Walk to the mat. Hey, I'm Tyler. Oh, I'm training Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm like, I trained for 3 hours. My students were like, what's happened to you? I was like, this is bullshit, man.
Right.
Like, look at this. You know, and then there's a few of those. You know what I mean? That sometimes, you know, you humans, I want to win, or sometimes I feel like I should have won. But I did the last one. There was this tournament in Brazil, and I knew they cheat me. I knew that there's no way this guy beat me. Now I'm venting. I'm walking around in the gymnasium, like, and I saw a door, and I opened the door. So when I opened the door, there were 50 para jiu-jitsu guys, like autist, Down syndrome, The first guy that looked at me was this Down syndrome kid, just like, he hugs me, he's crying. And now I'm like, hot. And this other kid, his name is Calvin, black belt too, he has no legs, no arms. You know, he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? Boom. You know? And I was like, can you just stop this? You know? So life is really going to give you something. So I know it's a long answer for a question.
No, it was great.
Jiu-Jitsu is the community, is you being on the mat, getting flexible, getting stronger. Yeah, you're going to learn a choke. You're going to learn how to escape something. Just be there. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate the fact that I have a lot of students. Some guys, they have zero flexibility. They have zero strength. They just love being there. You know what I mean? And everyone can do Jiu-Jitsu. As long as you have discipline. Mm-hmm. That's all. So is it for everybody? Yes. But not everyone is really going to do what it takes to be there. Because some days you're going to feel like, man, I cannot win one.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to lose a lot. You know, so it humbles you, you know, but in the end, it's all worth it.
Right.
You know, it's definitely all worth it.
It's been cool to start to see some of these like more high profile people. You'll see like Mark Zuckerberg or Russell Brand or like some of these other people, famous people started to get into jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. It's cool. Have you got to roll with some of those people?
Yeah, Russell actually was my student for a while.
Really?
Well, he was a student of a student in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, from us. You know, I don't know, the Tar trains, but I never trained with him. Tarzan trains. But you know, I just know those guys, you know what I mean? But I had a chance to train with Russell one time. Probably there's like Elvis Presley granddaughter was our student for a while.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of like people that probably come around. You know, I'm just glad that like, if you look at Zuckerberg, you know, he's a totally different man. He talks with confidence.
Completely different.
It's crazy. I remember like he trains with one of my friends, Dave Camarillo. And I remember he lost this tournament. He was so upset. I'm like, wow, he does have a heart.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think the next one we need to put on Jiu-Jitsu is maybe Elon Musk. You know what I mean? Because they were talking about the
Weren't they going to fight?
Yeah, that was the whole thing. But I think today I'll put my money in Zuck. You know, even Donald Trump's like grandsons, they train Jiu-Jitsu in Miami. You know, Gisele Bündchen trains Jiu-Jitsu. Dani Lovato trained Jiu-Jitsu for a while. There's a lot of high-profile Hollywood. You know, Rigan Machado is a big. Ashton Kutcher trains Jiu-Jitsu. He's like a brown belt. Thor is a blue belt.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy is a brown belt. Tom Hardy competes a lot.
That's what every time I see him on Instagram,
he goes for it. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? So I think it's super cool that, like, you know, if you go back to Mel Gibson, you know, he did Jiu-Jitsu for his whatever movie there was. I don't know how to say in English the movie name. You know, it's just amazing. You know, as long as you find a good school,
right?
All right, and then we go to that problem. You know what I mean? So with all greatness that Jiu-Jitsu is, we have the downside. A lot of schools, a lot of unprepared people. You know, unfortunately, we still have cases of, you know, bad things happen, right? But I think, you know, we still working towards even teaching more professional.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people like, oh, okay, I'm a champion, I can open a school and I can do jiu-jitsu. No, you cannot. You know, you're not sometimes mentally prepared for power. You're not really ready to do many things. You know, so I think, you know, do your research.
So that was going to be my next question. If somebody's listening to this, they want to get into jiu-jitsu, but they're nervous because they want to make sure they go to a good school. How does somebody, no matter where they live, how do they identify what a good school is?
Text me. I answer all my questions
on
my thing. Just hit me up. You know, like, you can go and look at like the environment. The best thing to do is just go and see how you feel. You know, make the questions that you got to make. You know, jiu-jitsu, you know, the average price is you know, around $200. So do not take pricing as something that will dictate what you're going to do. You know what I mean? Like, really go, okay, there's clean bathrooms. Are the people clean? Or is this a family environment? Are there girls? Are there kids? You know what I mean? So you don't go to meathead school. Maybe some people want that. Meathead meaning not in a bad way, more like more competitive school. You know what I mean? So there's a space for everything. You know what I mean? A lot of schools nowadays, like for example our school, they're very like executive training, you know, competition training. There's a whole division on that. But the fun thing is that all my executive guys, they love training competition, even though they don't do competition, because it's a way for them to feel, again, the community. You know, I tell my guys, I have a super fight coming up, and I told my guys, I say, guys, if you're 6'2" and you're lengthy, I need you. And some guys, but I suck. I said, no, I need you, man. Say, am I a help for you? Yeah, you're 6'2", you have long limbs. You might, but at least you're a body that I'm going to be facing. I'm going to teach you some things that I want you to do. Like I said, catch my foot.
I'm 6'2" and lanky. Let me know.
Let's go.
I got you.
All right. I'm waiting for you at my training camp.
All right. Give me the day. I'll be there.
All right. Every day, 9 o'clock.
You called my bluff on that one. We'll get there. We'll lock it down right after this.
Yeah, definitely.
Dude, that's awesome. So I just saw you were at the UFC recently. You look like you got to roll with Pereira, but do you watch UFC as a fan?
Of course. So since the first one.
Who right now currently? All right, well, I'll ask you two questions. Who do you think are the top 3 UFC fighters jiu-jitsu wise? And then who right now do you look at their jiu-jitsu in the UFC and you're like, that dude right there?
It's difficult today because, like, for example, what part of jiu-jitsu are we talking about? Is it submission game? Is it domination game? You know what I mean? Is it takedown game? So there's a lot, right? I don't know. I think the Dagestani guys, they're really adapting their sambo style into the jiu-jitsu for MMA.
Is it kind of like...
Yeah, they're like little anacondas sticking. Yeah. You know what I mean? You go like Makachev, all the Khabib kids. You know what I mean? Khabib is a great coach. But definitely, the biggest submission artist in UFC is Charles Oliveira. You know, his jiu-jitsu is really good. Like, he can move, he can submit you from the bottom, from the top, he can strike. So I think Charles is the one that for a long time.
He hit another gear. His career, he was just kind of like, it seemed like mid-tier, and then all of a sudden he just became champion. It's just
And the thing about like fighting, because sometimes once you lose, it's very difficult to get back up. I think that's what happened to him. Let's see what's going to happen to him in the future. But I think nowadays the Dagestani guys are really showing that part of jiu-jitsu. Maybe they're not the greatest technicians, but they can use takedown, which is also part of jiu-jitsu. You can say it's wrestling, but it's still part of jiu-jitsu. Right. You know what I mean? I think jiu-jitsu is the cumulative of everything. But yeah, there's a couple guys coming up from Brazil that they're not out there yet, that they do have a good jiu-jitsu background, and I want to see how they're going to go. Right. There's this one kid that just finished this guy in an arm lock. He's a black belt in judo, black belt in jiu-jitsu. But my criticism, in a way, is that jiu-jitsu, the way it's being taught nowadays, which I usually call BJJ, it's not combative at all. It's just very sport-oriented. That's why maybe you'd expect me to say a Brazilian guy, but I got to say, well, for the way that I see, the Dagestanis are using good jiu-jitsu because they're taking you down, they're keeping you down, they can do damage from the bottom, they understand their strategy, Like even me, like I have a good guard game, but I don't want to be on the bottom. You know what I mean? Like if someone on top of me, I'll try to submit them. If I get a submission, great, but if I don't, I'll find my way up to take you down and be on top. And I think that's with the modernization of the idea what jiu-jitsu is, like, the guard, playing on bottom. Like, I don't want to be on bottom.
Right.
I'm able to create damage from the bottom, but ultimately, you want to be on top. And that's what jiu-jitsu is. And that's what people are mistaken about jiu-jitsu. Like, they think jiu-jitsu is just playing with your back on the ground. And I think it's a big misconception.
Right.
Even though, I have a great guard, I like to be on top. I like to choke people from the top. All my submissions, most of the submissions are from the top. I have a lot of bottom submissions too, but most of my submissions are from dominant positions. And I think they're doing a really good job.
Nate Diaz is who got me into the UFC. So I've always been a huge Nate and Nick fan. But that's one thing they always talk about Nate is how he's not afraid to go from the guard or to go off his back. But that's what you see a lot. That's what you hear them talk about a lot in the UFC is there's not many fighters that can do anything from the guard or from the
because they're not being trained in a combat point of view of jiu-jitsu. Because a lot of their coaches. Maybe they weren't trained that way. Like when I started jiu-jitsu, the first thing that I learned about a guard is how to defend a punch. It wasn't about someone trying to open my guard. You know what I mean? So that's what's very important. So even my guard in jiu-jitsu as a sport is very combative. Like I just want to rip your head and break your arm, and my conscious of where you position, I'm always like, could you punch me here? You know what I mean? So I'm always like that. I'm always control your arms. I always control your head. Like if you look at jiu-jitsu nowadays, there's a lot of freedom. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of I think what's happening is the gap of combative jiu-jitsu, which require good takedown, great top pressure, into the sport of jiu-jitsu that's I can get away with none of this. I can pull guard. I can boot scup. I can just attack your foot. I can just attack your foot. I can just play guard all the time, and there's no consequences on it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when I started jiu-jitsu, there was a lot of consequences of being on bottom. You know what I mean? But again, hopefully it changes a little. If it doesn't change, the Dagestani wrestling, which is the top part of jiu-jitsu, I'm kind of, inherited that Dagestanis on it. I wish the Brazilians and the jiu-jitsu people would be a little more proud about it. You know what I mean? There's no pride into, not a good part of pride. I can take your ass down.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's why there's a lot of memes in jiu-jitsu. You go to street fight and I sit down and I scoop and I boot scoop to you and you run away.
Right.
You know what I mean? No, take pride of my students say, hey, you take his ass down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in a fight, you're not gonna pull guard. If you end at the bottom, sure, we have skills for it, but it's not the ultimate goal of it. Yeah. I don't want to be on bottom.
Hypothetically speaking, tonight, you're walking out for the UFC Heavyweight Championship of the World. What is your walkout song?
Oh.
What's that one song that just gets you going?
Eye of the Tiger.
Is it?
Well, that's a feel. Usually my songs, we don't do walkout songs in Jiu-Jitsu. Funny story, on the way here, I was literally, I put I like house music. I just like a little groovy. Mm-hmm. I don't like lyric songs so much because I've had experiences where now I'm going to a fight and the song is playing in my head.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I like more like beats. I'm more
Gotcha.
like a growing
That's
beat
interesting.
person. Yeah, I've had situations, especially like, like sometimes I'm like this, like jamming. I don't want to jam into you. No, I don't want to jam with this guy. I want to
Right.
kill him. So that's why like mostly I prefer just like either house music, good like beat music that doesn't catch. Otherwise, I'll have that little voice on me.
Right.
Me. So, and I was coming this year. It's funny because I have a match in a month, and I was coming here try to pick my song, and I just put like house music. Of course, I wasn't looking. Right, I was just say, okay, boom, I don't like this one. Boom, I don't like this one. I was literally just pushing forward on the way driving here.
That's funny.
So I'm still picking this song. Probably gonna be a little house, little tribal song. Kind of like a lot of beats and drums. That's what I would like. I would go to something that would get people like, whoa, you know what I mean? Not much like, well, this little party rock.
So there will be a walkout song at the super fight coming up, right?
Yeah, there will
All
be
right.
a walk song.
I'm coming, so
Yeah,
I can't wait to see it.
that'll be probably like some sort of like tribal, like what I mean, like instead of like drums, it'll be skulls.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough, dude, for making the trip and coming on and taking the time to do this. Thank you so much. The way we like to wrap up the episode, first let me ask you one question. Every jiu-jitsu guy is probably going to roll their eyes at me when I ask this question, but why do I have to, when I come do jiu-jitsu with you, what if I just want to do no-gi and don't want to do gi?
Okay, the very political answer,
Right.
Like
Sorry, jiu-jitsu guys.
political, like being like politic means like I'm being nice because this is what I do.
Okay.
I do jiu-jitsu. I have a system. I wear the gi. I love my gi. I feel like a samurai.
So you don't even do no-gi?
I do no gi.
Okay.
I'm a Hall of Famer no gi.
Okay. I figure.
No, you have to do jiu-jitsu with the gi. Okay, some people don't like it. I get it, right? But no gi jiu-jitsu, which see them even say that, got inherited by us, because many years ago those do different things. So let me ask you something. Do you know what Greco-Roman is?
Yes.
Do you know what a judo is?
Yes.
If I take the gi off, okay, now the Greco-Roman is doing judo? No, it's still Greco-Roman.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I can use techniques from judo in Greco-Roman.
Right.
Maybe I can use, for sure I can use Greco-Roman techniques in judo, but not the other way around.
Right.
So it's just different. But in my system, we grade you, we carry you. Your whole path will be wearing the traditional uniform.
Gotcha.
We do have a uniform. It's cool. It's white. It's beautiful. We have the 6 blades in it. You're cozy in it. You have your belt. It's fun. It's fun. Both are fun. You know what I mean? And I think with the modernization, I think no-gi is amazing. I like to call it just grappling.
Gotcha.
Because no-gi, I'm very like literal on things, like no-gi. Why are you like a no-gi guy? Why you a negative? I'm not this, right?
Right.
No, you are this.
Right.
I am redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're gonna say, I'm not addicted?
Right.
No,
Right.
I am. So it's from an affirmation of a statement.
Gotcha.
So that's why I like to say, when people say, oh, you do no-gi? Yeah, I do grappling. Yeah, I do submission grappling. You know what I mean? I just don't like no-gi. No-gi because it's easier to say it.
Gotcha.
But I think if I would be a no-gi guy, I would be promoting way more saying grappling than no-gi. But if you're gonna train with me, we can do both. You know what I mean? But if you want to learn the educational system that I present, you gotta go.
I want to learn, so we're going with you just talked me into the game, man.
All right, let's go.
Brother, the way we like to wrap up the episode, man, if you'd be so kind, they got to hear some of your story, they got to hear some of your background, they know who you are, but if you'd be so kind to take a look in your camera and maybe throw out some I am statements that let them know who you really are.
Well,